You're listening to The Extraction, conversations on the systems and strategies behind dental practice growth with Colin Ambler and Kyle Bergman. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to The Extraction podcast. Your host, Kyle, along with my co-host and founder, CEO of Team Care, Colin Ambler. Today, we have special guest Marni Blythe on the pod. Founder, CEO, principal of Full Pocket Coaching. This is an amazing episode because we're going to talk about so many things related to growth and fixed mindset. We even talk about floppy disks, and there's a couple other analogies in there, some related to fishing. So we're excited for you to stick around and listen to this. Marni, welcome to the pod.
Thanks for having me, guys. I'm so excited to be.
Yes, we're pumped to have you. It's so great. Shout out to Gary Takis, who told us you gotta have Marni on the pod. And we also know a couple other folks within the dental industry who you work with Tiffany. You guys are building things together, which is amazing. To get right into it, one of the questions that we love to start off with, no one, when they're 8 years old, people want to be firefighters, astronauts, ballerinas. No one really wants to be a dental industry thought leader, yet here we are. So what brought you into the world of dentistry? How'd you end up here?
That's a great question. Thanks for asking. So, really, it's my love of health. That's the first thing, oral and systemic health. I fell in love with oral health care, I guess, going back about 15 years ago. My background's originally as a marketing and communication specialist. I'm also an entrepreneur. I started my first company when I was only 18 years old in New York City. And I've had several companies along the way, most of them all correlated with marketing, communications, and healthcare. And a number of years ago, back in 2018, I had started a women's networking group here in our town of Holly Springs, North Carolina. And I got to meet an incredible orthodontist, and she knew that I was doing some different things in the world. I'd created a business system that really helped CEOs get traction in their businesses, that brought in emotional intelligence and leadership and communication and wellness in addition to practice management. And she brought me into her study club. And then I met a prosthodontist, and he said, I need to hire you. I've been in business for 20 years. I've never hired a consultant and I need you. And so I said, well, goodness, let me see what this is all about. And I started to really learn dentistry. And, 6 years later, here we are.
Before we go any further, I have to know, 18 years old, living in New York City, what was your business?
So we threw networking parties for young professionals in their 20s, 30s, and 40s at the hottest nightclubs in New York City. So I went to New York University, and so I had
Same.
my girlfriends, and they had great jobs, being able to work the door and do all the things. And so we were at places like Limelight, and we had that business for a couple of years. It was really fun.
Oh, I love that. I didn't realize I was talking to a fellow NYU alum.
What school did you go to?
I went to Stern. I got my MBA there, and then I was lucky enough. I actually was an adjunct professor at NYU for a few years.
You're a
What about you?
Sternian. You're a
I'm a Sterny. I'm a
Yes,
Sterny.
School of Education.
Awesome, awesome.
Love that.
So you're a hustler like us. I knew there was something about you that I liked, Marni, because you're adding so much value. Someone's inviting you to things. You go, of course. Honest, you don't even at the time probably know what that is, but you're like, hey, let me see, let me learn it, and here you are. One of the things that when we were talking about team care and the value, I know one of the things that got you excited was around incentives. How Before I lead the witness any further, just talk to me about incentives. What comes to mind for you with incentives with practice owners that you're helping?
Great question, Kyle. So, very often in this world of dentistry, what we see is such an emphasis on technology and just driving production. And we all often forget that the whole reason we have a business is because of the people who are behind that business. Without taking good care of them, without intentionally creating a culture of kindness and appreciation, you don't get very far and you don't retain a team. So, finding ways to incentivize and finding intentionality behind that is one of the keys to making people feel appreciated and valued. And then that just has these incredible repercussions. It's just the ripple goes out and people feel that. There's this beautiful energy that happens when you create a really fantastic culture. And one of the keys to doing that, in my opinion, is incentivizing that. But it doesn't, oftentimes, I think practice owners think that it has to be something so, above and beyond. But when you learn the languages of appreciation, people's love languages of appreciation in the workplace, which I love, shout out to, I think his name's Dr. Paul, and he wrote the 5 love languages of appreciation. And you start to understand that it's not money that is necessarily what is everybody's love language. Some people just want to spend time with you, go to lunch with you, stuff, things of that nature. So that gets me really jazzed.
Love that. We haven't done a screen share on the podcast in a minute for a couple episodes, and I think this is a great opportunity. Team Care does incentives, but I want to show you something that I think is touching on what you're talking about. So one of our superpowers at Team Care is helping practices automate incentives and virtually any incentive that you would want to do. I think one of the holy grails in the world of dentistry is Google reviews, and that it isn't specific to dental practice. Everyone loves a good Google review for their business. But one of the elephants in the room forever has been, if my practice gets a good Google review, how do I know who is responsible for that review specifically? Oftentimes the reviewer doesn't mention people by name, but if they do, it's probably just the doctor, but maybe it was the front desk person who was lovely, or the treatment coordinator. Well, Team Care has created something. And when I say Team Care, I mean Colin and our incredible development team specifically, where we can automate incentives, not only based off of when someone leaves a Google review, but we're able to see who that patient interacted with in the office. And we can give everyone a $5 bonus if they were not mentioned in the review, but we know that Andrew was the treatment coordinator and Susan gave a 5-star review. And so we're going to make sure that Andrew gets a payout for that. That is something that we offer. And for those that are watching this on YouTube or Spotify, I don't think we show the video on Apple Podcast. I'll share my screen so that also, Marni, you can see this too. So here's when you sync your practice to Team Care. During that integration process, we pull in all of the practice's Google reviews. And so here we can see this practice has got 10 reviews so far for this month. It's December 10th, 2025. And we can see all of our staff members. And if I click on this patient here, what it's showing me is the provider, 2 providers. We have the patient, and we can see here, okay, so Amanda and Eric were responsible for this patient's 5-star review, and then we automate a bonus against it. And so I'm curious, how is this something that you've maybe been, in your journeys with practices? It's not just about production. Well, we want everyone to give a 5-star experience. How can we incentivize against that? Now you can do this.
Hmm. How does it actually work in practice? How does it know? Well, who's putting in the data points?
So
I'll answer that.
yes, Colin, take it away.
So, we're connected to the practice management software, and I don't want to get too techy here,
Yeah,
but let's just say we know that Mrs. Smith was in our office. Like, she had an appointment, and all dental softwares, they have an appointment, and on those appointments, you might have some services, filling a crown, a prophy, an X-ray, or whatever.
sure.
And all those are labeled with a provider,
Yep.
and then Team Care does other stuff. But we look at all those information and we pull out the people that were involved in that patient's appointment. Not too crazy. But we match up to the Google review was Mrs. Smith. We find Mrs. Smith, we find her appointment, and then we just keep drilling down until we find the people in the office that did the great job.
So the thing that I think is really interesting about that is the automation piece of it. And we're talking about an incredibly busy dental practice. I know the one that you and your wife, Sharon, is that your wife?
Yeah, yeah.
That you've had, having
Yeah,
these spreadsheets or
yeah, there's no time for this. It's crazy.
any of right. That's why I asked the question, not to be super technical about it, but rather to highlight the fact that anything that's automated and doesn't add more work to your existing workload, because an administrative person and clinical people, of course, are so busy that the idea of adding another thing to their tech stack or adding another thing they have, another checky box, you don't get adoption, right? So I think in terms of when we're bringing in softwares and we're thinking about things, there has to be integration, there has to be automation.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it gets in the way of patient care, and that
No doubt.
everyone.
And people just don't even wanna do it, like, it just dies. And I think, one of the things that we like about this Google review thing is if Kyle, if you wanna share your screen again, you can, if you don't, it's alright. But, when that Google review comes in, Team Care does its job on it, figures out Mrs. Smith, it figures out who the people were working with it, and immediately when that after that happens, it, sends an email out to the entire team. If you clicked on one of those reviews, Kyle, and then it opens up and there's a thing at the top that says staff announcement. And so this is an email and it recognizes people
Yeah,
amongst their peers. I think that's a super non-monetary. We talk about incentives and I think it's always perceived as a monetary thing. And but like you said, it's like there's these different love languages out there and just having recognition, just people feeling proud that they had visibility amongst their peers. I think this is super powerful. It like creates this culture. And to your point, it's like things are automated, so you don't really have to do much work. But all of a sudden you start seeing high fives in the hallway and it just kind of happens. What happened? Oh, well, the Google review email went out and she got mentioned. So she was excited. And if you can introduce excitement into culture, it's a huge win.
that was a huge win. And, if you actually look at the statistics, being recognized by your peer group in today's world, when you have all these millennials and the Gen Xers and everything else, like um, being recognized by your peers is far more important to today's workforce than being recognized by a manager. So the fact that you have that layer in there, it's this added bonus, right, of your building culture, and that's everything that I'm all about. I wrote a book with Tiffany, it's called Culture Catalyst, and
Yeah. I didn't
yeah,
know you were co-author of that. That's amazing. I've read that book. It's great.
thank you so much. And so, we talk about the pillars of building a culture where people want to stay, right? Because that's everything. And so these these are the small steps that people might not think are important, but they're so impactful because it's these small things that are repeated daily that lead to these very big wins. So I love that. That's a really awesome feature.
So, Marnie, I want to ask you about something that's really close to that and touches on the same, I think, psychological principles of recognition. Here's Colin coming. So, some of our listeners have heard this story before. Colin and I met each other when we were lacrosse teammates at Drexel University. We were both lucky to be pretty good team captains, scholar All Americans, both individually. We had really great careers, but we also were subject to the depth chart, just like every other player on our team. And you knew where everyone stood on the team. We were Division One athletes and we were highly competitive with ourselves and with our peers. Colin brought that concept to team care and to the business of dentistry by creating leaderboards that everyone at a practice has access to. And so if you're a hygienist, you can on your phone or on the desktop see how many patients you've seen a day, what the average is, what your pre-appointment rate is. One of the sayings that we were talking about before we hit record was you pay someone to show up to the job. You incentivize them to do an excellent job. And for practice owners, and I'm sure you've come across these that say, I'm not going to incentivize. They are hired to do the job and they have to do the job. Well, this is a really great, I don't want to say it's an anti-incentive. We got to come up with a better name. But when you're able to give people visibility of the depth chart of where you stand, um, does that also improve performance? Or does it weed out the people that don't have a growth mindset and don't want to be better? What are your thoughts on that?
So in my world, we call this a scorecard. And a scorecard is typically when I build out a scorecard for all my practices, we work with the usually 8 to 10 most important KPIs that we need to be tracking on a weekly, monthly, quarterly, and annual basis. and you've got to know your numbers. We go to school to be dentists and hygienists because we love patients and we love patient care, but we don't learn a lot about the business side. And it's a real deficit that most providers are working with. And without knowing those numbers, there's no way you can be successful. If you don't want to know your numbers, go work for a different kind of clinic or something, right? Like a not for profit. This is still a business at the end of the day. We love our patients. We want to take great care of them. And we also need to make money. And so numbers are not emotional. Numbers tell a very specific story. Your numbers tell you everything you need. So when my practice owners don't know their KPIs and they don't know what they're doing, it's one of the first things that we get to. So then on top of that, then having a leaderboard that sparks a little bit of friendly competition that helps people to level up. You either level up or you level out, right? And so it's a wonderful tool again, but it incentivizes you to either, like I said, level up or level out, right? Because that's just
Yeah.
what's happening.
Yeah. I love it. Nick Saban, you familiar with Nick Saban? I think he's a famous Hall of Famer college football coach, most recently a coach of University of Alabama, coached professionally. He's credited with this saying, people that want to be exceptional want to be around exceptional people. Mediocre people want to be around mediocre people. And his job as the coach of University of Alabama is to make sure that he gets all the exceptional people on the bus and all the mediocre people off the bus. And when you have a scorecard, to use your term, you, yeah, level up, level out. I think Netflix is also a really interesting case study that talks about, like, I've just heard and read some articles around the culture at Netflix, and they're like, look, this kind of, I think, is going to bring it all the way around. When you work at Netflix, they treat everyone there like on a professional sports team. And everyone on a professional sports team wants to be the best in the world. That's how they got there. And so it's not personal. Look, if you're not going to be the best in class at Netflix, we can still be friends. I'll still go get a beer with you. But if you're not waking up every day and are pissed off for greatness, then I don't know if Netflix is the right place for you. And that's how we treated ourselves at Drexel. That's kind of the mentality that we're providing practices with tools that want to create that level of excellence and that level of expectation. So when you're having conversations with practice owners, there's the saying, it's you can't change people, only people can change themselves. But have you had success in helping practice owners change the way that they look at incentives or how they can create a different culture?
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. I think there's something important to first realize is that these kind of tools are not for everyone, right? We can't be all things to all people. And there are a lot of people who are okay with mediocrity, right? And so these kind of tools are for the folks who have a growth mindset, right? Who believe that we can shift, that we can change, that we can grow, that we can evolve. And it's okay. It's not a judgment thing if you're okay with the status quo. That's fine, right? Great. But the people who are interested in going to that next level, people who work with top line vendors like a Kane Waters, we were talking about that. That's the top 5%, right? The top 2% of practices in the world. And that's who we hook our carts to when we're in this growth mindset. So yeah, I've had a lot of great success, but I only work with practices who are mature business owners, often in specialty, who've got large teams who are not okay with the status quo and who fiercely want to continue to figure out how do we get to that next level. I'm not for everybody, right? And I know that. I mean, at the beginning of my career, that's not what I would have told you. I was like, let me work with whoever I can work with. But gratefully and humbly, I've come to a place where I realize that my avatar is people who really are ready to skyrocket their business and they're already successful. I also don't work with people whose businesses are failing. You know, I did that, done that, been there, done that. Like you're in a great place, you're ready to go to the next level. And it seems to me, like based upon what I'm seeing, is that team care is aligned in that same way. You're not for everybody, but for the people who are ready to put in incentives, who are ready to track their data, who are ready to say, where can we get just another 5%? Like that, this is the kind of tools that we're looking at using with y'all as well.
Yeah, I have a question for you with that. I
Colin, I'm
think
gonna have to
there's
turn my head like this because
I
you're like
didn't
this.
realize.
You go.
Oh, I
Now
didn't
I can
realize.
see your
I thought
face. That's
I thought that
perfect.
I thought this thing was doing it smartly for it. I'm sorry. Okay, so one of my good colleagues, Adrian, he runs a marketing firm. They talk being found and being selected. That was like one of their taglines that stuck with me. And it sounds like you're kind of every dentist in the same way. You want to attract the patients that you want to serve and make that a really good relationship. And you want to do that with your firm too. You want to find the right people. If I'm a dentist and I'm listening to this, what are some of the things that you think if you're doing an onboarding? What distinguishes these dentist like or these other business owners and their dentists? What distinguishes them? What do you look at? If someone's listening to this podcast, I wonder if I'm one of those dentists or not. I mean, I think people try to place themselves. What do you? What are some of the questions you ask people? How do you start to kind of like decipher if it's someone that you feel like has the motivation and the entrepreneurial spirit to grow or not?
It's such a great question, Colin. So I often go back to the idea of a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset, right? And if you're listening right now, you can actually Google growth mindset versus fixed mindset, right? And we are all a mixture of both, right? None of us is just 100%. But if you're on the fixed mindset of things, you avoid challenge, right? You refuse to receive criticism or feedback. You focus on always proving yourself. You feel threatened by other people's success. It's hard to accept failure or mistakes. You shy away from unfamiliar things. And you also believe that talent is static, right? So that's kind of if you're in the fixed mindset zone.
Great stuff.
Fixed mindset are never going to, unless you make some radical changes to your belief system, right? And our beliefs typically are inserted into us before the age of 8 years old. I actually have a talk that I do on building a bulletproof mindset, and I talk about this. And I'm going to age myself a little bit here, but I remember when we used to have floppy disks in computers and the ago. And I talk about beliefs being a floppy disk that's been inserted. We'll talk about a USB or something, right? That's gotten inserted and it's never gotten removed. So it's about looking at yourself and analyzing what do I believe about this, right? And it's a formula. What do I believe about X that's making me feel Y? So, what do I feel about growth that's making me feel uncomfortable? What do I feel about going to this next level that gives me this anxiety, right?
And
And
if you had to stereotype, sorry to cut you off, what do you think that is? Is it the work that's like, ha, I'm a dentist. I don't feel like managing my team. I don't feel like building out systems and holding people accountable. Those would be my assumptions of maybe some of the common themes. What do you find when you start to get to those points with people?
I'm
Why
not
are people
understand the question.
why are people what's your most common reason as you've talked to dentists? Why do people not want to take the leap? What are the common offenders?
Great question. Often it's burnout. We have a lot of people who get burned out.
Mhm.
That's one of the things. Other reasons that they don't want to take the leap is they're just tired. A lot of times people are just tired and they're wearing every single hat in that practice. They haven't learned how to delegate. They think that in order to serve, they're surviving, right? They're in survival and they don't understand that if you really take the time and you take that step back, that you can really then catapult forward. And so, just to finish my thought real quick, the growth mindset, folks, how you know you're in growth mindset is that you'll embrace constructive feedback, right? You focus on process, not always the result. And you're inspired by other people's success, right? And you step out of your comfort zone. So, just to kind of finish that thought, we have fixed mindset and then we have growth mindset. And we're all just this mixture of both, but we're hoping we're more on that growth mindset point of view.
Yeah, I love it. I think it's really helpful. You've got a lot of good frameworks of kind of how to measure and kind of qualify what that is. And it's so helpful just to kind of I have all my experience, all the dentists I've talked to, business owners, and I can clearly see that, yeah, these are definitely archetypes kind of how people are. And I think that part of the mission of team care is that relieving the bottleneck. I think when you're that one practice owner and you're facing burnout and you're trying to wear all the hats and do all the things. Everything's coming through you. It's the mental load of all that is such a taxing thing. And If you can relieve that, if you can redistribute it onto teammates and have everyone row the boat in the same direction and everyone kind of pull the weight behind them and not just you, that is the chasm, in my opinion. Is when people can cross that gap, they make it. They figure it out. They're like, oh, it doesn't have to be this hard. I don't have to sludge through this the way I'm doing it. I can use all the people around me. And I think that's where we've tried to be this turnkey software that's like, hey, we can help enable this. We can help automate, just like the Google reviews. We can help make this a turnkey system to put some of these systems in place that can help doctors delegate the management and the systemization of like their operations into something that's team based and a cultural exciting thing. So I think that all comes together. Yeah.
Yeah, I want to kind of put you on the spot for a second and ask you a question um, around the concept of a guarantee. So, Marni, you have this incredible consulting fractional COO service called Full Pocket Coaching. I love it because you offer workshops and you also will roll up your sleeves and go in and work with a practice for as long as they need from a fractional executive standpoint. For folks that are listening and they really like your point of view, if they were to attend a half day or full day workshop with you, what's the guarantee that you promise they will leave with?
Actionable steps that they can go and integrate into their practice on Monday or Tuesday or Wednesday. I think a lot of times we talk a lot, right? I was just looking at something about execution, actually. Where was that? Talking about the difference between talking about things and actually executing things. And I talk about being really consultative, but I'm an integrator at the end of the day, right? And the difference, I think, is that when you can help people to roll up their sleeves and give them the tools to actually put one foot in front of the other and get it done. And it's not just hype and excitement, because I think oftentimes we go to workshops, we go to seminars, we go to conferences, and we're so excited. And the moment we leave, then we go back into the real world, right? So it's really about having the tools and the system to be able to actually get the work done. And that's kind of, I think, the key to success when people work with me and our team.
I love it. So to use a poor man's analogy, if we're talking about fishing, catching fish, what type of fishing wire are we going to use? What type of bait? And you're saying if you come to Marni's fishing workshop, I guarantee that you're going to catch fish. We're not going to talk about theory around what type of hook you're going to use. Like, I'm going to show you how to cast and how to reel in the fish, if I'm hearing you correctly.
I love your analogy. This must be because you went to
Almost as good of an analogy as the floppy disk. I think that's still
Yeah, the
Hey,
floppy
that still wins.
yeah.
no, you know.
If you know,
Yeah.
you know. I love that. So, Marni, what's the best way for people to contact you and find out more?
Thank you so much. Yeah, just head over to my website, fullpocketcoaching.com. I just relaunched it actually with some new videos. I have a new speaker reel. I'm so excited to get out and talk to folks on topics regarding emotional intelligence, leadership, wellness, and communication. Those are kind of the pillars, and practice management always, but those are kind of the pillars of what I get really excited and passionate about talking to folks about.
Amazing. Well, Marni, thank you so much for joining us on the extraction.
Yeah,
It was a
Marnie,
pleasure
awesome to
having you.
have you.
Thank you all so much for having me. This has been so much fun.
Yes. See y'all next time.
See ya.
Thank you for listening to The Extraction with Colin Ambler and Kyle Bergman. Read episode notes and transcripts at teamcaredental.com.